In our previous session, we discussed about few examples. What is the importance of few examples working with these browser objects? So window object, location object, history, navigator, these are all the important objects. After understanding and knowing about the purpose of these objects, so I just given you a brief overview of all the purpose of these objects, right? So a programmer is provided with all these objects by the browser in order to handle the manipulations with the browser with regard to the browser. And in the last session, we saw how window object works and how a location object works and how a navigator object is used and what's their role and responsibility. So, and the history, how we can deal with these objects. Now, the important part is the document object. So what is the purpose of this document object, how this document object actually works? As I already given you a simple overview, like document object provides all set of properties and methods that are used to manipulate the HTML document. Manipulating HTML document means actually it is adding elements, removing elements, modifying elements, applying the styles, so many. Actually, one important thing you should remember is web browsers are very complicated piece of softwares with a lot of moving parts inside them, many of which cannot be controlled and manipulated by programmers. Remember one point, several things of your document, several things of your browsers cannot be controlled and manipulated by the web developers using JavaScript. So you may think like it is bad with such limitations, but browsers have locked down such operations for security reasons. That's the reason you cannot say that I can control everything in the browser with my JavaScript. You can't do that because several options are locked down for you. Earlier, older versions, so we have some wide range of options to handle the browsers. But now the modern browsers have a lot of security concerns. They will lock down several operations. You cannot handle them. So even you try to do that, they will not allow, browsers will not allow that. So they are all, browsers lock down all these options for good reasons, for security, right? Because a programmer cannot expect that I know do manipulations and I will do everything related to browser. You can't do that. Browsers will not support certain operations, which we were doing earlier, several years back. So we have to do some manipulations with the browsers, which are now no longer available. They are restricted now due to the security issues and security concerns and the other bugs that rises regularly. So that is the reason you should know that several operations related to document objects or window objects cannot be handled. So with the JavaScript directly every time, right? Now, what is the document model and how this document model works? How this concept works? So we will see that. So in the previous session, we learned about the browser model. In the browser model, you have a document object. Actually, so document object provides document object provides options used by developer to manipulate to manipulate to manipulate HTML document. That's what I given you in the beginning, to manipulate HTML document. It provides options, right? And very important is, so DOM, document object model, is a hierarchy of elements in document, is a hierarchy of elements in a document. So that means all the elements in a document are arranged in a hierarchy. That means hierarchy means root and child nodes. They are arranged in a hierarchy of root and child nodes. So which is often called as DOM, actually document object model. We call that as DOM, actually document object model. Now, how the DOM looks like? So what is the basic hierarchy of these DOM elements? How our programmers can handle the DOM elements, the hierarchy. So we will see that. Actually, so all the elements in the document as a part of DOM, that means HTML elements that you use for presentation, HTML elements that you use for presentation, the general HTML elements that you use for presentation are defined as nodes, under DOM, are defined as nodes under DOM. Nodes means childs, right? So they are defined as nodes under DOM. What is that hierarchy? See, so that is the basic hierarchy is this. You can see that this is the DOM hierarchy. Let me give you that diagram here. This is the basic DOM hierarchy. This is the basic DOM hierarchy. In that, already I told you, this is a complete browser model. In the browser model, the document have a model. The document model comprises of several child elements and parent elements, root child options. So that means a document comprises of collection of forms, collection of applets, collection of images, embeds, links, anchors, layers. And inside the forms, you have elements. Inside the elements, you have options. Means select comprises of options. This is the basic hierarchy, actually. This is the basic hierarchy. So generally, in this hierarchy, you have to know that technically, each one is called as a node. That means in this, you need to know some points, technical terms actually. What are the technical terms you need to understand about this DOM is actually, you need to know that in the DOM, you can see various types of nodes actually, different types of nodes. So various types of nodes. That means you can simply say node type, node, and its description. Actually, as I said that everything is considered as a node. In the DOM, everything is considered as a node actually. So that means each one is called as node. But technically, the nodes are again classified into several types actually. So we have an element node. It is an element as it exists in DOM. It is an element that exists in the DOM. So that means it is like a button or a text box or a checkbox or a radio or an image. This comes under element nodes. That means it is an element that exists in the DOM. Element nodes will be there. We have root nodes. We have root node. That means this is the top node in the tree. Top node in the tree. So in which in case of HTML is always the HTML node. Is always the HTML node. The root node is the top node in the tree. It is actually the top node in the tree. In the case of HTML, so it is HTML. This is HTML. This is considered as the root node actually. For a document, this is considered as the root node. This is considered as the root node. So this is the top node. This is the top node. So that means under that HTML only, you know that all the documents will come, components will come. Technically, that is called root node. We have child node. We have child node. That means this is a node. Is a node directly inside another node, which is called as a child node. For example, so you are using, for example, you are using img. So in img is a child of suppose figure. In HTML, images can be kept in a figure. That means inside the figure we can keep an img. Then img is the child node and figure is the parent node. So that is what actually we call as parent and child. So that means it can be under that child node. Another one is we have a descendant node. Descendant node. The purpose of this descendant node is nothing but actually descendant node is anywhere inside another node. So that means image is a child of figure. In the image is a child of figure as I showed you above, and it is also a descendant. Descendant of whom? So that means, for example, so the point is a node anywhere inside another node is known as descendant node. That means the point is very simple. So for example, suppose we are configuring a body section. In the body section, we have a figure. In the figure, we are using an image and the figure is closed. And here some body is closed. Now in this type of hierarchy, you should know that in this type of hierarchy, img, actually in this type of hierarchy, img, so the image img is child node of figure. That means it is directly the child, and img at the same time is descendant of body. I hope everyone understood that. Descendant of body means it is present inside the body, so it can be anywhere inside the body. That means it is not direct child. img is not direct child of body, but it is present inside body. Then you should call it as descendant node. If it is direct child, that means now in this case you can say that figure, in this case you can say that figure is a child node of child node of body. So that means image is not child node of body, it is descendant. Descendant means it may come anywhere. It is not direct child of that. Direct child of that. That is what actually descendant means. So descendant means. So and another option is parent node. Parent node. Usually parent node is a node which has another node inside, another node inside. Obviously, which have another node inside. But remember, so here in this example, so body is a parent node. Body is parent node. So means in the above example, you can see that in the above example, in this example, body is the parent node. Body is the parent node. But body is not root node. Which one is root node? Body is not root node. Which one is root node? Yeah. So always HTML is root node. Always HTML is root node. Good. Always HTML is root node. Yes. Always HTML is root node. So you have a root node. You have a parent node. Don't get confused between that. Root node is always HTML. That is the main root for entire document. Parent node is the parent of that particular child or the parent of that particular descendant, right? Is the parent node actually. So we have sibling nodes. So that means these nodes are the nodes that sit on the same level, These nodes sit on the same level, in the DOM tree. Then we call them as sibling nodes. For example, we have a body. In that we have an image, and in that we have an paragraph and the body clause. Now, in this case, IMG is sibling of paragraph. That means these two belongs to the same level. Then we generally call this as sibling node. That means, so in the body, so we have an image and we have paragraph. These are considered as sibling, belongs to the same level. These two belongs to the same level, right? And another important is a text node. It is a node, so containing a text string. So any node that contains a text string is called as a text node, like a paragraph, like a div, or a span, or a block quote, so or a data term, data definition, or a table cell. Any node that contains a text string is considered as a text node. So these are the important basic things you have to know. So under the DOM hierarchy. So actually DOM is document object model. DOM is the document object model. This comprises of collection of nodes. These nodes are classified or categorized into several types. We have element nodes, we have root nodes, we have child nodes, we have descendant nodes, we have parent nodes, sibling nodes, and text nodes. That's what actually the node. And actually JavaScript, technically JavaScript, that means you can say that programmer can use JavaScript to manipulate DOM. Can use JavaScript to manipulate this DOM. So JavaScript allows the developer to access the nodes by using DOM hierarchy. It allows the developer to access the nodes by using the DOM hierarchy. This is the DOM hierarchy. it allows them to access by using this DOM hierarchy. I will show you how JavaScript allows the developer to access the nodes by using DOM hierarchy in order to manipulate them, in order to work with them, right? We will see that. Technically, so how it can access, let's see one example. I will open our project. Yesterday's what we discussed, a basic project here. So we are opening that project here. Yeah, so that is the workshop. Yeah, so here, so I have some content here, some image is there. Okay, so I'm designing a simple page as a DOM demo. Okay, HTML. So here I am designing doc type HTML head, and let's keep some script here. In the body section, I have a image. Okay, and so that I kept an image and a div. So or simply, so I have a div. Yeah, in the div we have a form. So this form is having a heading as register, and in this form we have a text input type is equal to text. Okay, beside that input type is equal to text, and beside that we will just keep some button. So input type is equal to button. We are adding a button here. We are configuring a button. Okay, that is the point. So we have a form. So in that we have these options, and we have an image. We have a text and a button control. I am designing another form. So this I will keep in another div or somewhere. Yeah, better I will add another div. And in this div we have another form. So in that we have a heading login. And here we are having, so input type is equal to some email something, and we have input type is equal to button. Okay, some button. So we have register and we have login, some options here. Observe carefully. I have some content inside this, and I will run this, and you can see here, these are the contents in my page. Now in this here, we have an image. So for image, I defined some width is equal to 100, height is equal to 100, border is equal to 1. That means some image location is also there. Now I want JavaScript to take control over these elements. I want JavaScript to take control over the image and put an image. I want JavaScript to take control of the first register form. In the button is empty. I want the button value to be set to register. I want the button value to be set with the login. So actually, how JavaScript can handle your document. Generally, it can handle your document by using the DOM hierarchy. That means here, when body loads on load, we will call a body load function. So this body load function, we are configuring a body load function. This body load function should assign value a picture source, and it should assign some some value into this button of register, another into this login, right? Now the point is how developer can take control over these elements inside the body of document. Actually, it can use the hierarchy. It can use the hierarchy of DOM. That means by using DOM hierarchy, we can handle the manipulation. Okay, let's go into the DOM manipulation. When we go into the DOM manipulation, this is the DOM object. Observe this DOM object. In this object, can you tell me the hierarchy where image is present? Can you tell me the path where image is present? What is the hierarchy of image in this DOM? That means where the image node is present actually. You can clearly observe image node is present. Image node is present in document. And in document is present in, what is the parent one? What is the main root? The main root for browser. The main root for browser is which object? Window object. Yeah, good. In the window object, you have a document object. In the window object, we have a document object. In the document object, we have images. Images is an array. Array means it is a collection of images. The square brace is meta character, which indicates that it is collection of images. So now how we can access the image present in this document? We can access the image present in the document by using the DOM hierarchy. So we have window, that is the parent. In the window, we have document. In the document, we have images. Images is an array. Then you have to define the meta character. Now, how many images are present in our current document? How many images are present in our current document? How many images are present in our current document? How many images? One image is present in our current document. Yes, good. Can you tell me the index number of that image? Because it is an array. In an array, the index number of that image will be how much? It will be 0. It will be 0. Good. So that means now, yes, good. That means here the index number of the image, is 0. And it is an image, then we know that image will have an src, source. And source I will keep from images / some shoe.jpg. It will get that image and it will set that image. And you can see, and it is ready. It is working fine. This is how the DOM is accessed in JavaScript. This is the hierarchy. That is how the DOM manipulations are handled. That is how actually the DOM is accessed. DOM is configured, DOM is accessed by using this approach. So we are going through the hierarchy. So window is the parent in that document, in that images. And you are referring to the first image and we are applying a source to that particular image. Now here important is, can you tell me what is the hierarchy to set a value to the login button? I want to set login button with the login value. I want to set login button with the login value, login as value for that button. Then according to the DOM hierarchy, you can see according to this DOM hierarchy. So based on this DOM hierarchy, so how we can access a button? Can you tell me the hierarchy of button? Can you tell me the hierarchy of button now? You can see the DOM. So the parent is window. Okay, in parent is window. In window we have document. In that I am asking about hierarchy. I am not asking your knowledge of get element by ID and all this, because we are talking about DOM hierarchy here, right? So that means see the hierarchy. You can see the hierarchy. We have window. In window we have document. In document we have forms. In forms we have elements. Am I right? Don't forget about elements. Form elements are accessed by using elements. In the elements, all our elements are of form. Button, text box, checkbox, all are elements only. You have to remember that. That means all are elements only. Yeah, all are elements only. Observe important is text box is an element, email is an element, text box is an element, button is an element, checkbox is an element. All these are considered as elements only. All these are considered as elements only. All these are considered as elements only. When all are considered as elements, all are technically considered as elements, then how we can access? How we can access? See, so we have to define window in that document. In the document, we have forms. Now, how many forms we have in our page? How many forms we have in our page? How many forms are present in the page? 2 forms are present in page. Then in that case, login form, good. In that case, login form index is 1. Am I right? In that case, login form index is 1 because at 0 index, register form is present. That means login form index will be at 1, right? That means here the form, login form is 1. Okay, in that we have elements. So how many elements are present in the login form? How many elements are present in the login form? Form elements. How many form elements are present in the login form? 2 form elements are present in the login form. What is the index of button? What is the index of button in that? What is the index of button? Index of button. Index of button, because you know array index starts with 0. That means heading is not an element of form. Heading is not an element of form. Form element are these inputs. In that, first one is 0, second one is 1, second one is 1. In that case, good. In that case, here it should be elements of 1. Elements of 1. It is a button. In that case, button usually have a value. Based on what is the element type, you have to define its properties. Button is having a value. What is the value? Login. I will give the login as value for the button. So depending on what kind of element it is. If it is an image, src. If it is an image, then you can define image related attributes. If it is button, you have to define button related attributes, right? Now the login is defined. I will save this and here, so you will define, of course, you know, so text box don't have text property. Actually text box also have a value property only. In HTML, I think you know, right? So you have to know that value is the property. That is the basic one. Okay. Now this is the login for the button, and you can see button is defined with the login. Now if I want to put some value, inside this text box of login, if I want to put some value into the text box of that login, then usually it will be window dot document dot forms of 1, and in that elements of 0 dot value. This refers to the text box, and here I defined some john@gmail.com, something value is defined into it, and you can see that. So the value is applied into that. We are dynamically defining this. In the same way, how you can access the register form. Of course, the same approach. Window dot document dot forms of 0, and in that elements of 1 dot value. This is referring to the button inside the register form. We will give register as value for that register button, and you can see that it can apply that value. That is how actually the DOM is accessed and DOM is used. But this is a risky process for developer, because this is the native method. How actually the JavaScript understands HTML. This is the actual hierarchy, how it understands HTML. So it is using a DOM hierarchy for handling the elements inside it, Now the problem in this hierarchy, the major problem in the DOM hierarchy, the problem in the DOM hierarchy is nothing but if later when developer changes, the position of an element, then its index number will change. Then obviously your logic also should change. Otherwise, it will conflict with the content that you are using. That means why we don't follow this regularly in JavaScript, because this is how actually JavaScript understands HTML. But why we don't follow this regularly? Because this is the actual hierarchy. Because the problem is here you are referring the index numbers. And later when we are designing, suppose I have changed this button from here and I removed it and I kept above the text box. That means now the register button index changed. It is changed to 0. But in the code, that means it is still 1. In that case, you can see that now text box will be applied with register. And the button is empty now because its position changed. This is the risky one for developers. Because whenever I change the position of that particular element, then you have to, whenever the element position is changed, you have to update your DOM hierarchy also. That means you need to update your logic also. So that means whenever you are configuring the elements and accessing the elements by using the DOM hierarchy, one of the main problem is that changing the position requires the changing of index number in the logic every time. That is the reason you will use alternative mechanism for accessing the elements and using the elements. You use actually alternative mechanism for accessing the elements and using the elements. And what is that alternative mechanism of accessing the elements and using the elements? Actually, this is the method. Generally, this is how it accesses. That means, so this is an example to make you understand about how the DOM hierarchy works. This is actually the process, how the DOM hierarchy works. This is an example. But what is problem in this? The problem is nothing but, so whenever, so the position of any element changes in page, you have to update. So it's index in the logic. That is always required. Whenever the position is changed, you have to update its logic. To overcome this, now developer can use various options. Developer can use various properties and various methods. Developer can deal with various properties and methods. And for that, I think you have learned so many things in your JavaScript, like you might have used it to overcome the issue. You can use a document methods, like I think you have to overcome the issue. You can use document methods. Like what are the document methods? I think you have learned document dot get element by ID. Am I right? Document dot get element by ID. So you can use document dot get element by name. You can use document dot get element by tag name. So you can use document dot get element by class name, etc. So many things you can use. You can use these document methods. You can use the document methods, or you can also use reference name for elements. You can also use reference name for elements. You can also use reference name for elements. But actually, reference name for elements so requires a complete hierarchy to follow. That is the reason you might have learned about using these type of methods. Actually, we can use reference names. You can use the reference names. We can configure and we can use the reference names. Reference names means you can use the reference names instead of following this hierarchy. But reference names have an issue. You have to follow the issue, right? Right. So technically, how the reference names will work, right? Technically, how the reference names actually work. Actually, what you can do is here, instead of following this, so I'm removing all that. Instead of following this, we can use another point is actually every element can have a name. So image have a name called pick. So image have a name called pick. Image is having a name called pick. Form is having a name FRM register. And in that button, text box is having a name as txt name. And button is having a name as btn register. Second form is having a name FRM login. And the text box, this is having a name called txt email. And the button is defined with a name as btn login. That means now every element have a reference name. If every element have a reference name, then you can use the reference name. That means we can simply use pick.src is equal to images slash speaker .jpg something. And that means if I have that image called speaker.jpg, I can apply that here. This time I am not using the traditional DOM hierarchy. I am just using the reference names for the elements, pick.src. Then you can see that the pick is working fine. That's good. So that means it avoids the problem of changing the order of element in the hierarchy, right? But usually a lot of issues will be there in this hierarchy again. The issue is nothing but, for example, so I will take all your questions towards the end. Don't unnecessarily pop up with your questions at this level. Towards the end, I will take all these questions, right? Whatever doubts you are having, you can lower your hands, right? That is better, right? So here you can see when we are dealing with the contents by using the DOM elements by using name. Now, how we can access the register button? Then I am trying register button is having a name called btn register. So I will use btn register dot value is equal to register. Btn register dot value is equal to register. It is a register button, and you can see that it is not working for that register button. That means one of the major issue. What is the major issue by reference name? So is the problem with the reference by name is you have to configure the complete parent and child node hierarchy. So in order to access any child element, you have to configure the complete parent and child node hierarchy in order to access any child element. That is the problem in this name reference. That means what is the problem in this name reference? The problem in the name reference is very simple. See, actually you are trying to access a button, but button is not a direct element of body or document. Button is actually an element of form. That means button is actually element of form. So without accessing the parent, you cannot access the child. You cannot access the child. Then in that case, here what we have to do is we have to say frm registered dot in that. So the button, in the button value, that is the hierarchy. Now it works fine. That means what is problem in this name reference hierarchy? The problem in the name reference hierarchy is name will work, no problem, but it will reduce the issue of changing the positions randomly. That doesn't matter now. But the key issue here is if you are referring to a child element without referring to its parent, you cannot access. That means btn login dot value is equal to say login, and you can see that. So you can see that there is a name of btn login, but it is a child element of frm login, and you are trying to define that, and you can see it's not working here. Now we will go to the logic here. We will change because it is present in a form. Parent is frm login. In that we have btn login, and for that value, now you can see it is working fine. So this is one of the issue then generally we have to face while referring by using name. Not only that, one more thing, I think many of you know that. So name can be common for several elements. Name can be common for several elements. To avoid all that conflict, generally what we do is, generally we use element by ID. Because what is difference between name and ID? Name can be common, but ID must be unique. ID must be unique for every reference. So that is the reason generally you might have learned how to handle the elements. So, and regularly you have learned about an option, get element by ID, or get element by name, or get element by tag name, get element by class names, right? There are so many other options. Actually, document object provides a lot of properties and methods. We can access and use these document related methods to manipulate the DOM. You can do that by to manipulate the DOM. So generally several properties are present for this document object. You have seen how the DOM hierarchy is used by JavaScript or by the programmers using JavaScript to access the elements of HTML. How they can access the elements of HTML, how they can configure and work with the HTML elements. So name hierarchy is this actually. Name hierarchy is this. That is the problem with the name. That means this is an example. It is an example referring name. This is an example for referring name. Now, this is the referring name. That is an example for referring name. Now, if you are referring instead of name, you can refer by using ID. For example, for the element I given an ID as pick, and for this element I given an ID as txt name, and for this element I given an ID as btn register, and the ID for the form as frm registered, right? Yeah. And for other login also same. So ID as frm login, and the ID for the button as btn login. Now what is the point here is this time we can make it more simple. You can access the element by using document method get element by ID, and the ID is pick, and pick can have a source, and the source is images /samshu.jpg. It will apply that image for that particular picture. And if I want to access register button, then without referring the form, we can directly access the register button. That means here we don't need to follow the parent and child hierarchy now. Document can use the element by ID, btn register, it can access directly and it can put a value into this as registered, a value into that as registered. That's how it can manage it directly. And the login, same document here, document get element by ID. So btn login dot value, and it is configuring with the value. So it is nothing like which one is best. There is nothing like which one is best. So it is just like it depends on requirement. On the requirement, on the situation. So we use all these type of techniques for manipulating the DOM actually. That means nobody can say that which is best one. There is nothing like which is best one because all are used depending on the requirement, all are used. Depending on the requirement, all are used. So that's the reason you have to make sure that. So you use them as per the situation. Because for certain situations, IDs will have a problem in conflicting with IDs server side or uniqueness issues will come. Then you have to follow by name. Sometimes name have an issue, then you have to follow by using the DOM hierarchy. Because sometimes what I want to do is, I want to access the first element in the form. Then if you want to access the first element in the form and remove that element or add an element at the first position, then obviously you have to access by using the DOM hierarchy. So various methods are present for the document object. So document object provides a set of lot of properties and methods. So many properties and methods are present for that. This is an example for ID. This is an example for ID. Let me give you this also for your reference. This is example refer by ID. How we can refer the by ID and configure the reference by ID. So this is an example of referring by ID. Here I have written everything referring through ID. What is advantage of this? Now you don't need to follow any parent or child hierarchy. Parent or child hierarchy. That is important option. Now technically, so how you can manipulate the elements of DOM? How you can manipulate the elements of DOM? How you can configure the elements of DOM, access the elements of DOM, and manage the DOM elements. For that, you need a lot of properties and methods. I will show you a simple program that can pull up all the properties and methods of document object. Let's do one thing. Let's create a file. So document properties, document members, let's say members.html. Okay, here I'm writing a simple script. I'm just writing a simple script. So a function. So the intention of this function is to return all the document, because if you want to know what are all the properties available with the document object, you can write this. For var property in document is an object. I want to print all the properties. Document.write, I am using property and br. We are printing all the properties of document object. I just written a logic to read all the properties of document object, and you can see that, it will print all the properties. You can see hundreds of properties are present for the document object. These are all the properties of document object. These are all the properties and methods of document object. Document object comes with all this. Document object comes with all this. These are all the properties. So that means usually it comprises of so many things. This is a simple logic. This is a simple logic to get all the properties and verify. So just an example here. So to get all document properties, to get all the document properties, and you can see this is the basic logic for accessing all the document properties. So lot of properties are provided by the document. So these all the properties are returned for you. These all the properties are written for you. Several properties are there for the document object. These are all the properties for the document object. Hundreds of properties will be there. Hundreds of properties will be there. Out of this, generally you use the options for handling the manipulations, So out of that, you use the options for handling the manipulations. That means we use get element by ID, get element by tag name, get element by class name. We can use so many things here. Yeah. Now, in this approach, you need to understand few more important points, like how we can handle the manipulation with the document. Events also inside. See, actually, all the events are related to browsers. Right? All the events are related to browser. That means on click, on change, everything is provided by browser. Window object will provide. Window object will provide. That is the reason window object will provide. Document will inherit all them. That means actually browser events are related to browser, not related to document. Understood? Generally, you have learned JavaScript. You should know that. If you have learned JavaScript, you should know that browser events are related to browser, and those events are implemented by this document object. That's the reason document object will show all those event properties, right? That means properties are different, methods are different. You know the difference between property and method. Properties contains the data and methods contains the logic, right? Technically, that is the basic thing you should know. I just given an overview of how we can access all the members of the document object and view the members of document object. Here, so few more important things is DOM manipulation is very huge. Lot of things are there. In that, one regular first important point is how you can access any existing element. Present in the DOM, and how you can manipulate. Just now you saw that I used get element by ID, or get element by tag name, or get element by class name. We can use those methods. For configuring the elements, defining the contents and all. Actually, see how we can manipulate the DOM option. That means how the DOM manipulation works. That means DOM manipulation, how it is going to work. Actually, in the DOM manipulation, so how we can access the elements. That means, so how we can access and use HTML elements, access and use HTML elements. So configure and modify elements, modify their data, modify the data and styles. All this comes under DOM manipulations. So removing elements. Now the options you have seen above are accessing and using the elements. Actually, DOM manipulation contains so many things. So configuring, modifying, accessing, a lot of things are there. Now, in the modern development, process, when we are dealing with DOM manipulation, how we manage it. For example, see, I'm just creating a doc type HTML and head. Okay, we have a script. Okay, and we have the body. So we configured the body, and so body have an anchor. So this is on load. So on load. And here, so we want to access on load, body load, right? We want to access and use this anchor element and manipulate it dynamically. We want to access that element and manipulate it dynamically. In that case, generally we write a function here, body load. we are configuring the function body load, configuring the function body load. In this here, how we can access that anchor element, how to access the anchor element, because it is not having an ID and name. Can you tell we can access that anchor element? So you can use the tag names. Yeah, good. You can use the tag names. I'm saying how to access the element. Yeah, good. You can use the tag names. Yeah, fine. So see here, what we have to do is, in order to access any element, yeah, first important option. Yeah, see, first important option here in the modern programming, in the modern development and in the modern programming. So we defined some variable called link. In this variable, we can access any element present inside the document. So by using a document query selector, and the query selector refers to the element that is anchored, we can access that element directly here. So this is modern. That means the advanced level. So where the modern developers, so see, majority of people don't know about this. This is the modern development process. In the modern development process, we use more advanced things, so that will be more faster in accessing the elements and using the elements. So we have a query selector. So now through the query selector, we are accessing an element. So, and we are configuring the element. That means first step, we are storing it in a local reference. Now once it comes into the local reference, so now we are accessing that link, and to the link we are defining some text content inside it. The text content is a property where I defined as suppose, so some Naresh IT, so something like this. And this link usually requires an href, and the href is http://www.nareshit.in. So I defined this one. That means here we are configuring and we are defining the element in this way. That is the approach we are configuring there. And you have a link created, and I click on that, it will navigate to that particular location, and it will get me that location. So that means it will navigate to that particular URL, and it will retrieve that URL, and it will display that. So this is the modern programming, the modern approach. So we don't stick to like get element by ID, get element by class name every time. So it depends on the situation, how you can manage, how you can manipulate. Right now you can use a query selector. So a query selector is very much recommended in the modern approach, which is convenient because it allows you to select elements using CSS selectors. That is the great advantage of this query selector. Query selector allows you to select by using CSS selectors. That is the advantage. So I think if you have learned any CSS, you know CSS have a lot of selectors, like first child, last child, like several selectors are present for that. And query selector allows you to use all kind of CSS. Yes. So many CSS selectors are present. And query selector allows you to use these CSS selectors. That is great. That is good. Because generally get element by name, get element by tag name, it will not allow to access by using any query. What do you mean by query selector? Query selector means it can access the elements by using the CSS hierarchies. That means CSS have a lot of selectors. You can use those CSS selectors hierarchy here. That means you can use like nth child, nth of type, right? So you can use all these type of CSS queries, CSS queries. That means even you can use meta characters in configuring. You can use meta characters in configuring, like a asterisk, so like a tilde, like a exponent, like this. So CSS selectors will allow to handle all this. That means in the modern approach, how we can access the elements and configure the elements. So the point is the DOM manipulations. So example is here. First point, in modern approach, modern programming, so we use a query selector to access HTML elements. So as it can use CSS selectors. So that is the modern option how it can manage. So that is how we have done here. So we can access that and we can configure and we can define. That is how we can configure and define. So in the DOM manipulation, that is accessing any element, you can even create the elements. You can even create elements. You can remove elements. You can add elements. So there are several approaches for configuring, creating, and placing the new nodes into it, right? Configuring and defining new nodes into it. That means, for example, how we can create the elements, I will show you. Generally, placing new nodes, that means we come under creating and placing new nodes. So that means how we can configure, create, and place new nodes into the documents. Let's see one point here. So how we can manage that actually. Suppose here in the body, so we have a section. In the body we have a section, and in the section we want to create a paragraph and put some content into that paragraph. In the section, we want to create a paragraph and put some content into the paragraph. How do we define that? How do we configure? How do we define that? So generally, so how you can create an element and add an element into that. So see, a lot of things are there. I'm just giving few points for you. So the point is how we can access the section. I'm accessing the section. So sec is equal to document dot. So we are using a query selector. Through the query selector, we are accessing a section. Now into the section, after accessing the section, we are accessing that section. After that, we are creating a paragraph, and the paragraph contains document.create element. Create element. By using create element, you can create an element. I am creating a paragraph element. Okay. Now this paragraph element can be accessed by using this para reference. Now I want to add this paragraph. So with some content, then what we can do is, just now we saw that para can use a text content. Into the text content, so we will keep some information. So hello, so welcome to Naresh IT something. This we have defined. And now this should be added into the section. The paragraph must be added into the section. So we are accessing the section, we are creating a paragraph, and we are adding that into this. Now you can see here, this is empty. How to add that into the section? We have to use section.append child. Append child is a method which is used to add any element into the parent element. So we can add anything into the parent element. We can configure anything into the parent element. And we are defining that into it. So that means append child, what to be added? The child is para. We are adding the child as para. Now you can see that. So you can see that now this is added into the paragraph here. You can inspect, you can right click and you can inspect, and you will find that. So when I inspect that, you can see here. So in the design, we have a section. In the section, a paragraph is added. In the paragraph, we configured this. We haven't added any paragraph manually inside the body section. There is no paragraph here, but we generated a paragraph dynamically and added into the section, So that means we are configuring the elements. Generally, elements can be created by using create element. So you can create elements like a table row, like a table cell, you can add. So if you know JavaScript, you can do a lot of manipulations using hierarchy of looping, iterations, all are used for dealing with various types of content. So this is one approach. For example, here we are having a figure. And into the figure, I want to add a picture. Into the figure, we want to add a picture. Then there is another technique of creating the elements. Actually, so several elements are derived. This example I will give you means how do we create and configure the elements. Here, two things you should know is, so create element by using document.createElement method, and add element as child by using append child method, and that is the basic hierarchy that you have seen here. That is the basic thing you have seen here. So in this example, that is example here for your reference, and this is the example for placing. So there is another technique of creating and configuring the elements. Actually, several elements in HTML are derived from their relative objects. For example, so we have an figure, and I want to access that figure element. So if you want to access that figure element, so var fig is equal to document dot query selector. We are accessing the figure. And after that, here we are creating an image. How you can create an image? So previously what we done, document.createElement, and we are creating some img. We can create an image. This is creating an image tag. Actually, this image tag, you can observe that it is derived from HTML image element base class. You can directly use that base class for creating the element. So it's derived class, you can use it. That means here pic is equal to new image. We can create that image. Actually, this image is of HTML image type. That means it is returning HTML image. This is another method. You can directly use that HTML image. That HTML image class is accessed by using this image reference. It is returning an HTML image. So if you want to create here directly HTML image element, you can directly configure that HTML image element. But we can use an alias name for that. That is, image is an alias for creating an element. And for that we have pic.width. Pic.width is equal to, because it is an image, how many pixels? 100. Okay. Pic.height. Height is equal to how many pixels? 100. Okay. Pic.border is equal to 1. And pic.src is equal to images / some speaker.jpg. That's how we configure. And this picture should be added into figure. That means fig.append child, and add that pic into that figure. That is the hierarchy we are following, and you can see a picture comes into that. So there are various methods. Of configuring. There are various methods of configuring. So technically, the methods that you define, so all are actually derived from the base. Every element is defined in a base, and we are accessing using from the base. or you can use a create element method. This is another technique of how you manage that. You can use create element, and of course create element is internally using that class, or you can directly create and reference for that class, and through that you can manage. So this is another example of directly using. So that means using create element by using its base class, by using its base class. We can access and configure directly by using its base class. So which is actually done in several ways. You can implement from any another location, or you can simply configure in this way. So that is how we can add elements. So we can add into the parent, into the child, anything. It can be a table, it can be a drop down, it can be an option. So we have to first query that, and we can access it, and we can use it. You can do by using element by ID. So we can add an option into that. For example, suppose, so it's not like query selector every time. Query selector, because it is depending on the CSS, queries also allowed, so that in the modern development we use the query selector. There can be another approach here. So approach is nothing but, for example, we have a field set, in that we have a legend. So your city, and here we are defining a select is having an ID is equal to LST cities. Now into this is a drop down. Into this I want to put an option into the drop down. So I want to put a collection into that drop down, means dynamically we want to add anything into the drop down. We can do, for example, I have a array called cities. Cities is an array of suppose Delhi, it is an array of Hyderabad, it is an array of Chennai, something, it is containing a collection of cities. Now what I have to do is loop through all the cities and add them as options into this drop down dynamically. Then first point, we need to access that drop down. So LST cities. How to access the drop down? Document.get element by ID LST cities. This time I am not using a query selector. I am accessing that by using ID. We are configuring by using ID, accessing that. That is drop down. Okay. Now what we have to do is we have to loop through all the items in the drop down. And for every all the items inside the cities collection, for every item we need to create an option, and that option should be added into this drop down. That option should be added into the drop down. That is the basic thing what we want to do, because in the drop down we need an option. Currently we want to add that dynamically by collecting the data from this resource. Then what we generally do here, so how we can manage that, how we can configure that. Usually what we do here, we are writing an for loop for where item of cities. So that means we are reading every item present in that cities collection. So for every item in the cities, we have to create an option. So where OPT is equal to document.create element, we are creating an option element. Which element you want to create? Option element. Okay. As you know, in HTML, option requires text. Option requires text, general text. Text is nothing but the item. Item is nothing but the city name will be used as text. Similarly, option.value, opt.value, value also item. That means the same name will be used as value also. And this option must be added into the dropdown. After creating the option, that option must be added into dropdown. That means LST cities dot append child. So OPT should be added into the dropdown. We are accessing that. And when I save this, and you can see that, that means now the cities are inside this. We are adding the items into the dropdown. We are creating the elements. We are manipulating the elements and adding the elements into the dropdown dynamically. So whether it is a table, whether it is a dropdown or a list box or radio or checkbox, any element you can create dynamically, and you can add the element dynamically. You can create, add the element dynamically. Not only creating and adding elements dynamically, you can even configure the styles for those elements dynamically. We can configure the styles for the elements dynamically. So if you want to configure the styles for the element dynamically, lstcities.style, we can use a style. Style, we can put some background color. So we say background color is equal to some yellow. That is a background color set for that drop down. We can apply some styles dynamically and it will set a background color for that. We can give the styles, we can give the effects. So all these are under the DOM manipulations, how you can handle the DOM manipulations. And very important here is, for example, suppose I have a button here. I configured the button here. And the button on click is equal to remove element. Remove element is a function. So I said remove something. So I am configuring a function here as a remove element. And this function should be able to remove any element from the DOM hierarchy. Of course, you can use a lot of things for removing. That means, so lstcities dot, I can use remove method, lstcities dot remove method. But important, this requires some more options to configure additionally. For example, here, when I click the remove button, it should remove that. That means you can remove an element from the DOM hierarchy. You can add the element into the DOM hierarchy. So that means we can manipulate the elements dynamically. So we can just use remove, we can use remove child. There are several options to manipulate. You can even define several attributes dynamically to the contents. You can see here when I refresh in the inspect, you can see in the inspect here. So this is the document. That means that is the normal option here. Responsive design is there. I will switch to that. Yeah. Now you can see that in the list, in the hierarchy, you can observe this. In the hierarchy, we have a selector. This is the select with options are added into that. Options are added into it. And when I click on remove, you can see from the elements that item is removed. So it is no longer available there. We can add the items, we can remove the elements dynamically, we can move, we can change, we can configure in so many ways. All these are under the DOM manipulations. Generally, when you learn about working with JavaScript and HTML, these are all the DOM manipulations. Generally, we have to learn to deal with JavaScript and HTML, right? So this is the basic approach of how we can handle. I just given a flow overview that what a programmer can do with the DOM, but it contains a lot of things, right? A lot of manipulations you need to understand that requires good knowledge of HTML and JavaScript. And this is all the basic of JavaScript. You haven't learned anything advanced of JavaScript. This is all general JavaScript. A JavaScript should allow the programmer to manipulate the document, and he needs to know all this in order to work with it properly, right? I hope you are clear with this.